right, welcome everybody. Have you ever dreamed of opening your own coffee shop? Many entrepreneurs have not turned that dream into a profitable reality. Today's guests did exactly that, and they wrote a book on it, literally. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and I'm excited to welcome Andrew and Claire, the authors of the international bestseller, The Daily Grind. They have over 15 years of experience running both independent and franchise coffee businesses, and they transform their expertise into a practical guide that's become a go-to resource in the industry. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce both Andrew and Claire. Welcome, guys.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Yeah, this is my first podcast with two guests, and I'm so excited to hear both sides of your story and the whole writing process. I mean, oh my goodness, I'm very curious because I, as a ghostwriter and editor myself, I collaborate with people all the time in writing a book, right? But it must be like a whole different story, working with someone you're so close with and trying to write a book together. Can you tell us all about what was that like? My goodness, did you guys like collaborate really hard together, or was there any difficulties?
I suppose it relates to our working life. So when we started working together, when we first opened the coffee shops, we didn't start it really till we were sort of in our late 30s, early 40s. And we both had careers and worked independently. And then, of course, it was a bit of a culture shock working together. For the first, I used to fly off to Europe on a Monday morning and come back on a Friday night. And then suddenly working in a coffee shop, instead of being like 5,000 miles apart, we were no more than a metre apart. So within a very short period of time, we realized that we had to be really clear on what our roles were within the business. And we adapted that really for the writing process, didn't we?
I totally agree with you, because we both got different skills that we bring to the party sort of thing. But together we make a unit, and we work together in the shops, and we work together on writing the book, and we work together now with our coaching. I think it was very hard initially, as you said, because I always make the joke of we'd have a problem and I go to bed and wake up with the solution, and Andrew would go to bed and wake up having a good night's sleep. So we, being married for so long, we get to know each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the technical process of writing, we use Dropbox. I would get up at 5 a.m. and do a chapter, and then Claire would then come in a bit later in the day and review it, and then edit it. And we use that sort of routine. I'm a sort of a morning person. Claire's more of an evening person, so that worked as well.
Yeah, totally. I'd been up delivering babies as a midwife throughout the night for 24 years, so I refused to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. But to be quite honest, I don't think we could have sat side by side to write. We needed to be separate, but Andrew would download at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'd wake up at 7 and then take over. And then we still went to our day jobs running coffee shops.
Wow. There's so much to unpack there. Okay, so first off, I mean, the fact that you not only took your separate individual lives, but just the whole entirety of running the business together. That's a whole nother step right there. I'm sure a lot of our listeners too, they're businessmen, they're entrepreneurs as well, so they know how difficult it is to run your own business. But for a lot of people, you come home at the end of the day and your significant other, your family might not necessarily be so involved in it, but it's kind of amazing how you're able to sort of work together and build something simultaneously just like that. I mean, that's something very admirable. And not only that, but you're able to transfer that into the written word as well. I mean, that's a whole nother story too. And the funniest thing is, one thing I always ask on these podcasts is, okay, like, are you a night person or a morning person? When do you like to get your writing done? And you guys I love you're both on both sides of the spectrum there, because there's pros and cons to it all. So in terms of like writing it together, and was there any difficulty in sort of like, I could only imagine, you write a chapter and then Claire jumps in and she's like, Andrew, what is it? Was there any like instances of like, why are we going in this direction? Or would you say you pretty much agreed on everything that you talked about?
I don't think we agree on everything in life in general, but you talk it through and you come to a compromise. I think a lot of the book that we wrote got culled. It was very therapeutic to download, but then we'd look at it afterwards and say, well, no, we'll just take that to one side and leave it out, as we sort of collaborated on the final product.
I think the culling bit was interesting because we also had we were ready to publish, or before we published, a friend of ours who's got an amazing brain in terms of being able to spot mistakes on menus and stuff like that, became our proofreader. So she really helped us with that final process of putting it all together, I suppose. We didn't really argue about it because we don't generally argue. We've been married like for 7 years, so I think the arguing phase is gone. But what we did that made it easier is we sat down and produced a really clear sort of sketch, a real good skeleton of the book. So we knew what the chapters were going to be. We wrote it in a sort of logical fashion. We wanted it to be easy to read, for somebody to get people to think a lot, to put a lot of questions in people's minds that they hadn't really even considered. Because we used to see, I think one of the reasons we wrote the book in the first place was with our shops, we could see competitors opening in, and this happened a lot, didn't it?
It did.
People would come and open. Now, not we're against competition at all, because actually the market was growing, but what we saw was people opening in units that we knew would never work. They were either too small or in the wrong place, or then they opened with the wrong type of branding. The whole thing was, you could see it was written all over it, this is going to collapse in 18 months. And there was one unit in particular that had 3 separate types of coffee shops in it within about 18 months, where the owners had gone in, they spent a fortune doing it up. Actually, it wasn't big enough, it was in the wrong place, and it failed. And then they sold it, pretending that they had a family commitment, and somebody else came in with a great idea and then took it on. But that really frustrated us, really, because we could see lots and lots of people losing money. So we wanted people to be able to pick our book up and actually realise, actually, it's not as easy a business as you might imagine.
But also to get everything in the right order. The number of people who choose their coffee or choose their coffee machine before they've even got a site, before they even know what sort of coffee shop they're going to have, is basically getting people to take a step back and start from the beginning. And what do you need to know first, second, and it all leads on to the next one. Basically, we wrote it, I believe, how I would have wanted a book when I first started. I wanted a little Andrew and Claire on my shoulder telling me, don't go down that rabbit hole, forget that, move on. Or hang on, stop, think about this a little bit more. So that's the reason we wrote it.
Well, I mean, that's one of the most important things you can do, is to try to find a hole that needs to be filled and then fill it with your book and your advice. First off, I think it's kind of sweet that, rather than looking at the competitors and being like, oh, they're still in competition, you're looking at them like, oh man, they really should have done this with their shop. I mean, that's so, just like empathetic, that like sometimes you don't get from a lot of people, like you're looking at it and you're saying like they should have got a new coffee machine or whatever. And not only that, but you took a step beyond, and now you have a book and you're helping just everybody in the industry. I mean, that's something amazing that you were able to do with this. Now, I guess my question is now, you found the need for the book, right? And, you wrote the book to fill the need and create solutions for the problems. What was the outlining process like there? Because I'm sure like, Claire, you're thinking about like all the different coffee machines to make, and Andrew, you're thinking about all the different locations that you could have bought. Like, what did you do when both of your minds, you sat down and you were like, okay, how are we going to put all this onto paper? What was that process like for you?
Well, we started off with the mind map, didn't we?
Yeah.
And
mind map, okay.
So I always think, write it how a younger Claire would have wanted it as a business plan.
Yeah, we use mind mapping a lot, and we still do the same process now whenever because we still write articles for magazines and publications and stuff. We do a fair bit of blogging as well. And whenever we start any project, we any consulting work we do as well, we use the mind mapping process. We just sit down and brainstorm it and collate it all together, and it really helps you clarify and sort of put a logical sequence into things as well, because there's a lot of stuff overlaps with any work you do, and we find that a really, really therapeutic way of getting stuff on paper, getting stuff on the page, and gives you a really good. And then of course, with the mind map software, you can just keep on adding to the branches and
move them around a little bit.
Yeah. And that's how effectively we did the very first draft of the book. So we had the mind map software, and we would use that and write a chapter and one end of the branches. And then once we were happy with the general feel of that, we then sort of converted to a Word document so we could publish it.
That's incredible, because, as an editor too, I have so many manuscripts that come to me, and it's very clear that they didn't even think about what was going to go in the book, right? They just sit down and they start just like brain dumping on the page, which is actually a very good way to write, because then you get all your creativity and your ideas out. But having that map and really outlining it, especially when you're working with somebody else, is something beneficial too. Do you have any certain program? Is there a certain program that you've used over others? For me, I'm thinking okay, we just took a piece of paper, like a whiteboard, and we made a map, but I'm assuming you have a program that worked really well for you that perhaps our listeners might benefit from?
Yeah, it's called iHD, and it's been around a long time. It's quite simple. It works on Windows and Mac, and it's relatively cheap as well, in fairness.
Good, yeah.
And it syncs over over the cloud as well, so you can work on different devices. And yeah, you can convert it into a PowerPoint presentation or export it as a web page. You can do lots of stuff with it. But yeah, that's what we've used. We discovered that probably 20 years ago. I suppose we've been using that. That's how old we are, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably a lot more programs like that right now too for everyone to
Yeah,
like just sort of take
yeah,
their ideas and plug it in and
yeah.
find a good way to, because I'm sure with collaborating too, it's very important. So one other thing you mentioned too is this had a lot to play in your consulting work as well. And I know you also, you went on to do a lot of speaking engagements, after the fact of publishing this too. So can you speak a little bit to how, after you published this book, how did, sort of having your pages and your name on the cover influence just everything else? How did that trickle effect help everything with consulting and presenting? What was the impact?
Well, to be honest with you, we've written a book. It's been in the top 10 since it's been published. So therefore, we know what we're talking about. It gave us the authority to say we've written a best-selling book. And that way we got invited to speak at certain events and be able to share our thoughts with people.
So I don't think we've ever never pitched for a speaking slot. People have always come to us. So based on the book and based on the fact that we're sort of well known now in the industry.
That's some people are just searching for those speaking engagements. A lot of our listeners, they really want to get out there and share their ideas and get on stage and present. But I mean, you guys just live in proof that when you have that book, it gives you that authority and they reach out to you. What was it like the first time you got like that invitation? It was like, can you come speak for us? Was that a little bit surprising for you? Were you excited? Were you a little nervous?
Yeah,
I think yes, exciting and nervous. In my previous life had been a parent craft teacher. I'd spoken to, I could stand up in front of loads and loads of people and talk about babies, and you'd spoken quite a lot in your previous life to big events. You've just got to sit back and think, we are the experts on this. We're the ones that know it. We're the ones that have written it, and just get up there and be confident. And it just flowed from there, really.
Yeah, I think it's quite a privilege to be invited to speak in front of your peers about this sort of stuff. And then when we started doing it, we realised there was a lot of people who've had to get used to come along with the book, with all their marks and writings in it, saying, this is I bought this 5 years ago and we still use it to this day, and that's sort of so rewarding.
Yeah, they hold it up and there'd be post-it notes sign it. It was just amazing. Yeah. It was just an amazing feeling that we'd made a difference.
And I think one thing we do is that every time we do a presentation, we write a new one. So I know a lot of speakers out there will use the same material time and time again.
But you make a whole new one every time.
We do every one we do. We might do it 3 or 4 times on the bounce. If we do say at the Excel trade show, we might do it on both days of the trade show, but we never repeat a talk. So I think perhaps we should do. I don't know, but it's but it helps us again. It's the writing process of writing those sort of 20,000 words, 15,000 words that you need for a half-hour presentation. So
I mean. So I'm wondering now, how on earth do you take that content and repurpose it every single time? You tailor it to, is it specific audiences, or you come up with like a new message, perhaps from your book?
A bit of that, I suppose. I think we look at what the trend is. So if there's something specific that is worrying people, or we're getting lots of questions in our, in our groups or from our clients around, then we'll sort of think, well, actually, there's a need for that. Like the most recent one, we talked about how to on a real tight budget, whereas previously, post-COVID, we were talking about how do you bounce back from COVID, how do you, reinvent yourself post-COVID. So, favorite ones that we did was 10 reasons, and Claire did this one a couple of times, didn't it? The top 10 reasons coffee shop fail. Well, 13 reasons coffee shop fail.
13 reasons coffee shop fail.
Yeah.
And I think if you go through it and it resonates with people, you can see them nodding and in the audience and things. So
kind of like holding up a little mirror, right? Getting them to think like, oh wait, am I doing that too? Stopping them in their tracks almost. Yeah, no, I like that. It's so important to make sure that you're relevant in your talks too, because I'm sure there's so many, like you said, who just get up on stage, they say the same thing over and over. Who's going to want to keep inviting you if they know what you're going to say? Right? I mean, that's another piece of advice for our listeners too, is that, once you secure that engagement, right? Once you have your book out there, people are asking you to speak. Don't just be like, all right, here's my speech and call it a day, right? You have to adapt to what people need. I actually recently wrote a blog about that, like taking your book and repurposing it for all sorts of content. For example, I'm sure all this is in your book, but you're pulling like the chapter on why businesses fail, or the chapter on, so-and-so thing. You're taking the content and you're spreading it out. Making the meal last.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the beauty of the book is that it's not, we almost add more into the book content through through the presentations we do. So it actually gives us new ideas. So we updated the book about 3 years ago with some, keep revising it. So it's probably due another revision within the next year or so. But we've already got a load of content there, which is more relevant to when we first wrote it 10 years ago, I suppose.
Yeah. Sorry, we've also moved on to add in more, because there's only so much you can put in one book. So we've then gone on to put a club together where people can join and take it one step further about learning of every chapter.
So like a book club then?
No, it's called Start Up a Coffee Shop Club. So anybody that's interested in opening a coffee shop, they've read the book, but they want to know more. They want to delve deeper into it because, there's only so much stuff you can put in a book and actually people absorb. We used to run a course basically. So effectively we used to run a course before COVID, 2-day course in London. And we basically put that online and we've added tons of extra stuff onto it as well. So it's even more detailed with practical sort of exercises, downloadable templates, all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty much everything you need to open a coffee shop.
Plus you get us in a private Facebook group that you can ask us a question and we'll answer it.
Wow, full access to Andrew and Claire's knowledge. I love it. Where can our listeners, what's the exact URL they can go to find you on
It is startupacoffeeshop.com.
Nice and simple too. I love it. Yeah.
One word, no gaps. Startupacoffeeshop.com.
No gaps. Got it. This is incredible. So many people, they write their book, they put it on a shelf, and that's it, right? They say they wrote a book, and sometimes they could talk about it at a party, but you guys took it so many steps beyond, not just by your speaking engagements, you also have that whole group for people to go on. And, your content now is becoming more than just a book that's been written. It's a legacy, like long after you guys decide, like, what, I'm done doing these talks, people are still going to pick up that book. They're going to find your talks online, and, it's something that's going to keep lasting. That must feel amazing.
Yeah, we hope so. I hope we stay relevant. I think the thing with coffee shop, no matter where you are in the world, pretty much human behavior is very similar. So whether, you're opening a coffee shop in Australia, America, or Argentina, the hospitality, the reason people go to a coffee shop or a cafe is the same worldwide. There might be different things, but, you don't go to a coffee shop necessarily for coffee. You go to a coffee shop because you want to meet some friends or chill out, or while you're on a dog walk, you might just be hungry or thirsty. But they're the same human needs that a coffee shop sort of provides where you are in the world. And also these things have been around for centuries, so it's not a new phenomenon. People like to be in a room with other people. It's particularly with the demographic change we're seeing with people living longer, people being on their own for longer, working from home, all those things. People, move away from drinking alcohol as well, healthy foods, all that sort of stuff. So the pub and the bar is going down, whereas the coffee shop is got a renaissance. And these trends are global. They're not just not.
It's not just in the UK. It's all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing I didn't even consider. A lot of people might write their book, but it's about like a niche topic, which can be very useful, right? But maybe only for certain people. Whereas you really found something that everybody relates to. I mean, I literally have a cup of coffee right over here, for example, right? Like, we all need our morning cup, or, maybe if you're not a coffee person, you're at least having tea or like something like that for the most part, right? So another way that you were able to take your book and your ideas and make it just so universal is by having a topic that can relate to anybody. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I'm sure you have the experience in the industry too, which definitely helps. It's just like another, incredible pro tip too, is finding something that can be so adaptable to anybody.
It really helped the fact that we'd actually run a business.
Exactly.
When you look at a lot of books out there, no disrespect to sort of the journalists and the professional writers out there, but there are a lot of help books out there you see in all topics that the person who's written it has never actually done the job. They've done their research, and they might do a great research, but in reality they've never been in the shoes of the people doing the job. So I think that is one of the critical bits to success, because you can research this to the heart's content, but until you've been there and you've had this massive bill come through unexpectedly, or somebody's called in sick on a Sunday morning and you've got to cover a shift.
Yeah, you have to be in the thick of it to really have those personal stories.
It really helped. Yeah, it really helped us.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's also what kind of helped develop the book as well, because there's a difference between kind of laying out the facts and writing your book and also having those personal stories to add in there too. I mean, can you maybe share for our listeners like an example of one of the stories you have in your book that particularly might stand out to them, and relate to us in a way that teaches a little bit of a lesson?
Well, one mistake And let's be quite honest, we all make mistakes. And if you
Okay.
don't learn from your mistakes, it's a day to retire. My big one that comes to mind is that I tended to do the back of house, the HR, the people side of things initially when we first started. And I didn't realize that you had to have a utility contract. So when we took over our first shop, I assumed by taking over the electricity contract, it would just carry on. But it didn't. It stopped and went on to an emergency tariff. And I suddenly had a bill for, I think it was £73,000
Oh,
for a quarter. And that was a major. We didn't pay that. We negotiated it a lot
I was gonna
lower
say,
than
Carrie, you
that.
like to be like, I didn't know, help me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did negotiate it a lot lower than that, but it was a learning curve to realize that you've got to be on top of all the admin side of things.
Do your research too, like know exactly what's going to happen, and don't just be like, I did my paperwork, now it's going to be filed away. You have to stay up to date and really make sure that what you did is correct.
So that's one thing that is always when I'm working with private clients, opening a brand new shop, make sure you've got a utilities contract.
Know what you don't know, do you? That's the thing. And
You don't
assume
know what
there's a
you
lot of
don't
assumption.
know.
Yeah, there's a lot of assumptions there that you might make because, if you bought a house, then it wouldn't be the same issue, or a flat. You just naturally go on the same tariff as before, but because it was a commercial premises, our tariff went from sort of really cheap commercial prices to the maximum price they can get away with charging per unit.
Yeah, and why
So-
wouldn't they if they can get away with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that just goes to show the importance of having a group like yours, for example, because, I'm sure a lot of people just pop on and they might learn something that they didn't even know they needed to know just by kind of scrolling through the feed or the conversations that are on your group. So I guess that goes to show to all of our listeners. I mean, whether you're starting a coffee shop, find a group like, Andrew and Claire's to help you out, or there's plenty of groups out there for whatever niche that too. It's all about community sometimes, finding people who know something and reaching out to them. I'm sure you guys had like a whole community of people who helped you get here too, right? You mentioned you had somebody who proofread your book. Who else helped you in the process of writing?
We went on a course because when we decided we knew nothing about it. So we self-published the book and we knew nothing about it, absolutely nothing. I was good at Excel, but I was rubbish at Word. I didn't know how Word worked, basically, apart from a word process. So we went on a course and that guy really helped us, Damien does, because he just said, listen, it's simple. You need to just write 500 words a day. And after 6 months, you've got a book. And we sort of adapted that approach, really. We didn't quite do every single day, but we did probably 5 days a week.
Yeah, it was very good because he gave us deadlines. At this date, we're all going to come together and we're going to have a copy of a book, the first copy of a book. And it really gave us structure and deadlines, because it's quite easy to say, oh, we're going to write a book and then not do it.
I think because there was a group of about 10 of us, probably five of us came up with a book by the end. The other 5 went by the wayside. And there was a seminal moment when, you say, well, you tell people you're writing a book. I'm writing a book. And you're amazed how many people say, oh yeah, I'm thinking about writing a book as well. But then there came a point when actually we'd written a book, and that was like a massive tipping point in our sort of story, I suppose, because actually we'd done it. We put the hard work in, and 9 months or so. Well, we started writing it in April. It was published in November.
At the end of November.
Wow.
We gave ourselves a deadline of December, and we published it in November.
Our son did all the graphic design work for the book.
Yeah,
Our friends.
he did all of that.
Wow.
So it really was a team effort then.
Yeah, our friend did the proofreading, but
We had friends who would read the book and give us honest feedback, and we chose people who would tell us the truth, not what we wanted to hear.
Yeah, you don't want to just hear, this is great.
yeah.
I mean, that's what's really important too. A lot of people get out there and they want to do it all on their own, especially, a lot of business owners, they feel like, okay, like I made it this, I want to do this on my own too. Like I know everything about writing, but it really takes a team to help you, whether it's your friends and family for you, or, I've heard of, some business owners, they reach out to like their colleagues for like help too, like, hey, do you mind just like reading this? For example, Authors on Mission, that's exactly what we're here for. We have all sorts of services, angel writing to ghost writing to marketing to planning to, everything. So we do the same kind of things. We help our clients stay on track, we give them the deadlines, we help them walk them through the process so they don't just fall off the charts. If you have a goal in mind, you sometimes just need that extra support to get that out there, and that's exactly what you're able to do.
100%.
Yeah, it sounds you did exactly what Damien helped us with. So, without his help, we wouldn't have had a bestseller. We wouldn't have got a book. We wouldn't have, created something that, as you said quite kindly, is likely to have a legacy. The marketing bit as well was really important in the early days to get us out there. Now, got 500 odd nearly 600 5-star reviews on Amazon. So it sells itself almost when you click on the page. But in the early days, when you only got 1 or 2, it's hard to get that momentum going. So we worked on that. So we did a bit of marketing at the very beginning as well to get us out there, and that helped us get up the chart and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you need that too sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Get your word out there. But now you're saying it comes to you naturally now, right? People just reach out to you for the talks. I mean, you gotta have you get to sit back a little bit, and the hardest part is just finding a relevant. Well, I was gonna say you have to come up with the content now. Like that's kind of your hardest part, is finding what's relevant and keeping it fresh, right? Or is there maybe another challenge I'm missing? What do you think?
I think staying relevant is important, because you can't just say, "Oh, I've written a best-selling book," and then that's it.
And it's amazing how quickly things change. When we did the revisit a few years ago, some of the stuff we'd said in there was still relevant, but actually the terminology had changed. So Google had changed the name of its Google Business Service to 10 years ago. It's now Google Business Pages. There's a few cues in there that actually make you feel like it's written in the last century. So updated all that stuff as well, because otherwise people lose the authority. If it doesn't sound and feel relevant, then people ain't going to listen to it. So if they can't, if you get something as fundamental wrong as that, the name of something or how something works, or referencing a social media channel that no longer exists, it would just, so keeping the book updated, I think, is quite important, particularly now a style of book. If it was a novel, it wouldn't really matter, but as it's a help book, a business help book, then it needs to be up to date.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell my clients there's one of two ways you can do it. You can either try to keep your content evergreen by making everything kind of just neutral across the board that'll be relevant, but then again, who's going to read something that's just so overarching that doesn't quite give you what you need, but you were able to find specific things, and you're keeping it updated, which is perfect. I mean, one thing you didn't mention is I'm sure the industry is changing as well. Like technology for the coffee machines is improving. Like there's probably more advanced beans out there, or maybe there's certain trends of the beans that need to be updated too. I mean, all that sort of thing too, you need to stay updated as well. And that's what clients need and what the readers need.
The market has changed dramatically, hasn't it?
100%. It's, I mean, when we first started in the coffee business, you couldn't get a good cup of coffee anywhere. You were still going to and getting instant coffee in a polystyrene cup, 1 sugar, milk. That was it. Whereas now you can get good coffee in everywhere. I mean, you always joke that there's something in the wardrobe upstairs.
Yeah.
It's amazing that coffee shops have really taken over.
Yeah, they have. The market has changed, so there's a lot more supply out there, but the demand has increased as well. Otherwise that supply wouldn't be there, and there's much more variety now. One of the reasons we wanted to open a coffee shop is that I used to work in London in a previous life, and did a lot of my work in Starbucks and Costas, and then when I went back, we're from Wales, and when we went back to Wales for Christmas, I thought, well, I'll need to pop out and get a coffee from Starbucks or whatever, but there wasn't any there. They haven't got out that far now. I know it's hard to believe because Starbucks are everywhere now.
We're that old.
Yeah, but it was really at the beginning of the coffee revolution, the third wave, as they call it, that we jumped on board because we could see that people were demanding. There's nothing better than a nice cup of coffee that wake you up in the morning, or it does something to you. I don't know what it is. It's it's a legal drug, so it gives you a real kick.
That's what I mentioned before. Everybody needs a little something to wake up in the morning sometimes. Exactly. And for me, it's actually really early at 6 a.m. here. So, I mean, of course, I need a little bit of coffee to get my mind going first. It's another reason why you guys just have so many incredible things working for your book, which I think all our listeners are really going to learn from. I mean, talking about ways to make it relevant, finding other methods to keep your book going after publication, the talks, the workshops, the groups, and not for nothing, but the overall universality of it too is everybody wants their coffee, everyone wants to know about it, whether you're running a business on it or not. It's something everyone can relate to, so that's just another incredible thing you have going. So what's next for you guys? You have talks all the time, you have your group. What else is going on right now? Do you have anything on the horizon?
Well, we have got another book in us, which, because we are busy, we haven't quite got it down on paper yet, but we've written over the last 5 years probably 100,000 words, if not more, in terms of individual articles we've written for magazines and stuff like that, and presentation and talks. And I've got a real clear vision of what the next book's going to be, but I really have got to knuckle down and get it on paper.
We've got to do what we did on the first book and say, right, now we've got 6 months to publish.
Yeah.
And a lot of we've got content there to write another book, but instead of writing the other book, we've put it all on our online resources up till now, which stopped us writing another book. But we will write another book.
I think what we probably need to do next year is just to say, right, we're not going to have as many clients and for 6 months, 9 months,
Okay.
and then just allocate that time to the writing process. I think the fact that we've written so much, we've got so much written down, it's a little bit daunting at the moment because,
Yeah, no, you're probably looking at it like a sea of
yeah.
information. Like,
Yeah.
how do I weed
Yeah.
through all of this
Yeah.
content?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious. So what was your vision for how this would be different from the daily grind exactly, like in terms of content? So you have, all of these articles out there and you want to sort of pull from them. And what do you have in mind? I'm just curious in terms of...
I think if you look at the daily grind was like a business plan. Okay, so the daily grind, the sort of next is going to be the sort of the real detail, what you need to do, almost like a store operating, a standard operating procedure detail level. So it's the next level down. So if you come into our world, you get the daily grind as the first book that will then either put you off opening a coffee shop or want you to find out more, and then our next book will be more about the stuff we do on a one-to-one basis, the strategies and the actual physical process. We did keep the daily grind, our first book, as without too much detail. As Claire said, we did go into a lot of detail during the writing process, and then it's going to put people off. We wanted people to just come away with more questions in their head than they went into it. And if we would have put too much of the real detail in, then people would have stopped reading it, I'm sure. Every chapter in the book at the moment, people come away with it thinking, blimey, I hadn't thought of that. And that's what we wanted. But actually, we've thought of it, but we haven't communicated it. So that's the next step, really. It's the standard operating procedure level of detail within it, which I know I won't be the second book is never as popular as the first book, unless you're J.K. Rowling or something like that. But more of the detail, the sort of, the practical.
And as you said, if reading the daily grind has stopped somebody opening a coffee shop, we've done our job, because our job is to stop people losing lots and lots of money and their house and everything else because they've gone down a venture wrong. So to stop people opening a coffee shop, we've done our job.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess overall the main challenge face then is just to kind of find a way to take everything and put it into that format. I guess what your main thing right now is you're looking for a way to organize it all, and that's why you set aside all that time for next year, which is great. You have that whole plan in place. I just want to throw it out there. If you ever want any help with it, I'd be more than happy to help you weed through any articles, that sort of thing, help you come up with a plan. It's kind of what we do here in Authors on Mission, so maybe that's something we can talk about afterwards if you might want a little bit of a hand. I mean, it's like we said before, it's all about having a team, and sometimes when you're so close to the content that your brain gets a little bit muddled, like, oh my gosh, like I love this article, I need it in here, I need this in here, I need this in here. I mean, that's great. You two kind of might help each other weed that out too, which is, you're an amazing team on your own, but you need a little bit of extra hand, we're more than happy to help too. You have an amazing empire growing here. There's only, you can only go up from here. So let me know. It's something to talk about. But I mean, as we, start to come to a close here on our podcast, I guess I have one more question to ask. What kind of advice would you leave for anybody out there, any of our listeners who might be looking for maybe not, starting a coffee shop, but also writing a book based on their knowledge? What's a piece of advice, maybe one from Andrew, one from Claire, what you might give to somebody looking to follow in your footsteps? What would you say? Maybe it's a challenge.
What we do about opening a coffee shop or any business, really, I think the number one thing that we talk to people about, and people don't invest in the time in for whatever the reason is, they don't want to invest the time to be really clear on what their business is going to be. So we talk about the why, about understanding why you're doing why you want to open a coffee shop. You get to really, really understand what type of coffee shop you want to open. Is it a community coffee shop? Is it a cycling cafe? Is it a dog cafe? Is it a cat cafe? Is it for young mums and babies? What really, or is it going to be a robot cafe? Somebody asked us in our group today, I'm thinking of opening up a cafe with robots in. I think, well, actually, if you open a cafe with robots in, you're going to be a maintenance man, effectively filling up the robots. rather than a barista delivering hospitality and having fun with the guests. So be really clear. I think that's the thing that and often that's the first thing that when we get a new client, we'll talk to them about, even if they've been in operation a while, what do they stand for? What are they famous for? What need do they fulfill in their local area, and how well are they doing that? And often the reason they're not doing as well as they should be is there's a big disconnect. They just open a coffee shop because actually I think it's an easy way to make money, but actually I like dealing with people, but they might not be good at admin, or they might not be good at dealing with complaints, all that sort of thing. So and they might not be just good at telling their clients what their mission is. There's a lot of places out there that are sort of top secret. You go in, you got no idea what you might have a world-class barista stood behind the counter who's won the competitions or has been to the farms and built relationships with you've got clients that buy their own beans in from farms. They control the whole of the supply chain, but they struggle to tell people what makes them different. So I think that's it. This is the why. That's for me.
I totally agree with everything you said. I would also tell people, whether it's writing a book, whether it's opening a coffee shop, whatever industry they're in, I would take a step back and really think carefully what you're going to write about, and take the right advice. Now, we said this earlier, take the right advice. Obviously, writing a book, authors on a mission. Of opening a successful coffee shop, Andrew and Claire. There's an awful lot of people out there that tell you they're experts and haven't actually walked the path. And I think it's very easy to take the wrong advice. So research who you're going to take your advice from. And I also think it's easier, personally, to be in business with a partner that you trust, but is not a carbon copy of yourself. That's a lot of mistakes people make. Exactly the same, looking in the mirror. Andrew's got pros, I've got cons, and together we actually make a whole.
Balance each other out. I love that.
Yeah, but also take the right advice and get the legals in place before you actually start. Take the emotion, before the emotion kicks in, get all the legals and what you're going to do, whose role is what.
Okay, I mean, between all of that, listeners, this is gold right here. Take this advice. You've seen this work for Andrew and Claire in their business, in their books. This is a lot of valuable content here in this episode today, from, just the start of your business to how you're able to put that on paper, to how you turned it into a legacy, to how you continue to update it, and now a whole nother book coming on the charts. I guess, following your timeline, by next year, you could say, without promoting it too much, but to everyone listening right now, stay up to date. Do you have some social medias that they can follow you on to kind of stay updated, aside from your, group?
Yeah, we're on Instagram at the Coffeepreneurs.
Coffeepreneurs, okay. And we'll include those handles here when we post this podcast too. So listeners, you can click on those right now. And all I can say is thank you so much for joining us, because your insights today have been incredibly valuable. From expanding your book into talks and groups and making it just so universal, adapting it to the world today. Thank you. That's all we can say right now is thank you for your expertise. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you, Danielle. Yeah, it's been lovely to meet you.
It's been wonderful. Yeah. And to all of our listeners, thank you too for joining us. Another episode of Authors on Mission podcast. Andrew and Claire have really shown us how deep industry experience can be transformed into valuable resources that impact entrepreneurs worldwide. So if you too are ready to share your knowledge, the book of your own, remember what we learned today. And you can find The Daily Grind on Amazon. Why don't you hold up the cover for everybody so they can take a look at that. There it is. We saw it before, and I remember it's expertly designed by their son. It's a beautiful cover. So check it out on Amazon, and you can connect with them through their websites and everything. So make sure you check it out. Until next time, I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and this is Andrew and Claire. And keep writing, keep learning, and keep inspiring. And have a wonderful day, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.